wow, what do you know? It's time for the Pocketneif Show. Hey, it's Mike on the mic again for another episode of the Pocketneif Podcast. As a man who's mostly dealing well with ADHD, there are not a lot of things less likely than me making it to the 100th episode of this podcast. I started this, do you call it a show? Because I was looking for a way to connect with people during the early stages of the coronavirus pandemic back at the beginning of 2020. The state of Kansas was in a sort of lockdown and our church wasn't meeting in person, so I was working from home and visiting by phone. A fellow pastor had started a podcast about spirituality and fitness. I listened to the 2 episodes he'd produced and thought, I guess I could do something like this. I snooped around a little and found a decent mic, located a podcast hosting site, and wrote my first script. Life is Like a Blooper Reel was my first foray into airing my thoughts to the world. The next time I posted, I shared a song a friend had helped me record a year or 2 earlier. I published new content twice a week for the first month or so, and then backed off to once a week, a much more manageable schedule. Friday morning at 4 a.m. is now my regular drop time. While I'm sharing my 100th episode today, one thing I don't have 100 of is listeners. My top episode, Honoring Your Father Part 1, was played 41 times. Most releases garner 10 to 15 downloads. Recently, my Watch Out for That Tree episode was listened to exactly 3 times. I think one of those was me. With numbers like that, maybe you're wondering why I bother to crank out a new episode week after week. I'll tell you why. Because every once in a blue moon, someone tells me they were encouraged by something I said. Every month or 2 or 3 or 4, I hear from a listener who shared an episode with a friend or coworker because it was meaningful to them and they thought it would bless another. There's a short passage toward the end of Galatians which often keeps me going. In chapter 6, verses 9 and 10, Paul, inspired by God, gives this bit of instruction. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we don't give up. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. This podcast, every single episode outside of the kind of goofy ones, has been presented each week for nearly 2 years in hopes that in someone's heart, good will result. Someone will be spurred on to love or good deeds. Someone will be encouraged to keep going and not give up. Someone will hear God speak and walk closer to Him. 100 times I've set a microphone in front of my face. I'll keep doing it 100 times more, maybe 200, maybe 3. As long as the Lord gives me breath and His urge to put thoughts out there which point to Him, I'll have something for my 11 or 12 or 13 listeners. My prayer is that every once in a while, you will hear the Spirit whisper truth to you, which you've been dying to hear. Until 101 posts, follow God and give heaven to all those with whom you rub shoulders. God bless you this week. Oh no, it's sad I know we've come to the end of the show. See you next time.